18.5 million children in Nigeria are currently out of school. This is according to the United Nations Children's Fund. The alarming figure, which has been rising since 2001, comprises of 60% being girls.
Since Boko Haram abducted 200 schoolgirls in the northeastern town of Chibok in 2014, dozens of schools have been targeted for similar mass abductions. The numerous attacks on schools by jihadist and criminal gangs in the north have particularly harmed children's education. These attacks have created a precarious learning environment, discouraging parents and guardians from sending their children to school. According to UNICEF, last year about 1,500 students were kidnapped by gunmen. While most of the young hostages have since been released for ransom, some still remain in captivity in forests, which are havens for armed groups. Violence and mass kidnappings have forced the authorities to close more than 11,000 schools in the country since December 2020. The situation has resulted in increasing cases of child marriage and early pregnancy.
Yeah, very challenging situation there for girl children in Nigeria. Coming here to South Africa, the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour is taking place in Durban from the 15th to the 20th of May. According to global estimates on child labour, jointly released by the International Labour Officer and UNICEF last year, 160 million children are in child labour today. For a preview of the conference and also to unpack the severity of the child labour problem globally, we're now joined by Francesco who's the Chief Technical Advisor at the International Labour Office. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much for having me. Very nice meeting you. Thank you.
All right, how do we define child labour for the purposes of this conference?
Child labor is defined by the international community, by the international labor standards. There are conventions that limit the age for access to employment. We normally it's around 15 or 16 years when every country decides that it's the time of compulsory education ends, so the children can start working. So normally it's around 14, 15, depends on the countries. However, when we talk about hazardous work, or what we call also the worst form of child labor, then children can start. Children cannot work at all, so only adults can do this work, and so they can start working at the age of 18. Whatever is below that age is considered child labor. So child labor is not helping her parents at home or helping also parents who are farming in the countryside. If this is not, if this is considered light work, if this is compatible with education, child labor is something that deprives the child for having an education, for enjoying her or his life as children.
How widespread is it across the world and then perhaps on the continent of Africa?
As you recall, our last estimates of the International Labour Organization of UNICEF are telling us now there are 160 million children still trapped into this child labor, including the worst form of child labor. This means 1 child out of 10 in the world, so it's still very spread out. The good news is that in the last...
No, carry on. Carry on.
Yeah, okay. That is overall. If you look at the African continent in particular and sub-Saharan Africa, this is the continent which is particularly hit by this phenomenon. There are 86 million of children still working in South Africa. Globally, the ILO and UNICEF have come out with these estimates every 5 years. We noticed that in the last 20 years there has been a good decline on child labor. There were more than 260 million 20 years ago, so with the reduce of 100 million of children working. However, lately, in the last 5 years, this decline has slowed down. And it's very worrisome because it's the first time this is happening. And so we are worried that the target the international community gave to itself to eliminate child labor by 2025 will be hardly met.
COVID-19, has that been a factor?
It has been a factor. We are now calculating, and in Durban, as from tomorrow, we will come out with other new estimates, a new statistic on how COVID has unfortunately impacted this. It has slowed down the progress, certainly, because for one simple reason, it has created more poverty, and in many cases, parents are obliged to request also to the manpower that they can find in their family to compensate with the lack of decent employment that they lost. They got unemployed, and so this is had a very bad impact.
So what are you hoping to have on the agenda and deliberate on at this particular conference?
As you recall, this is the first time that the African region is hosting a global conference on child labor. We are extremely grateful to the government of South Africa. You recall that His Excellency the President will open the ceremony tomorrow. We are particularly grateful to the Ministry of Labor for organizing this. It's a big conference. It's the 5th in history. We started organizing this decades ago, just almost 30 years ago. And we are hoping to accelerate action. We want to come out with an outcome document, a call to action, and that in the words of the government of South Africa, they want South Africa to be the land of change. They want to come out with measures to once for good get rid of child labor and make sure that children are free. So there are a lot of expectation and a lot of ambition around this big conference. It is starting here in Durban tomorrow.
So how does it work to cause and effect this change? So you come together and various stakeholders come and discuss, debate. I guess in the end, what are we saying? Ministers of labor in each country, private sector even, all have to be party to this, agree on a way forward and start implementing.
Correct. The conference is bringing together more than 2,000 delegates that will be joining in presence or online. That's maybe the positive opportunity that the COVID has created. Many are actually joining online, fully part of the presence. There are 10 technical panels that will discuss the different topics surrounding child labor, the lack of social protection, child labor in agriculture, how child labor is in the supply chain, child labor in crisis, etc., etc. And then there are more than 40 side events where all the members of the international community and civil society can show the progress and share with others. But we have the political dimension too. As you recall, we have more than 40 ministries in charge of labor and other matters that will come from around the world. There are head of states, there are UN agency principals that will meet and discuss. So it will be the government, workers representative, employers representative, CSO, academia, all coming together and trying to find their way. And for the first time, there will be a panel specifically on financing and finding the necessary resources. I've identified an important resource gap to eliminate child labor. We hope that it will be a call to action that will look at the root causes of child labor and try to accelerate in a way that, maybe if it's not by 2025, but in the next year when we will have the next global conference, the numbers will really go down. We are very grateful again to the government of South Africa for organizing this. It's a huge effort, but we know that South Africa wants to take the lead, not only in the region, but globally on this matter.
in many ways, we're talking about a gathering of the willing, those that really want to see change happening. And sadly, there are many countries that are just delinquent and are not interested. How do you intervene in those kinds of scenarios where some countries, it's practiced, they don't care what the world thinks, and the children in those countries, sadly, are victims?
Yes, it is true that there are countries that are more active than others. There are countries that took a lot of time to recognize that they had an issue of child labor in their territory. Precisely, that is the role of the UN, the role of the international community. Not to finger point, not to sanction, but to create a space of dialogue. Because these countries, they love their children as all of us, but simply they say that in some cases that they don't have the necessary socioeconomic condition to implement a convention that says that no child should start working before it ends the school year. So it's a dialogue with everyone to try to find the necessary measures all together. It's a partnership. We look at that. We look at the parts who can bring on this. And yes, it is the primary responsibility lays with the countries for sure. But this is a job for everyone. Workers have a role to play. The family themselves have a role to play. The school system, the social protection system, and the private sector. We are having, I don't know, just to mention the CEO of Coca-Cola who will join us tomorrow because they want to see, and Nestlé, just to give two names, they want to know how to better embark on this because they realize that the world became global and it's very difficult to identify where a problem of labor right is. It can start somewhere where the sugar plantation is and then ends up in a factory in thousands of kilometers away. So it's a global responsibility. Countries are less hiding themselves, denying the issues, and now are more willing to collaborate. So we are positive on this way, but we have to go fast. We are not going fast enough. We have to accelerate and we have to innovate. So that's why we're looking also to innovation technology and also on monitoring, how to make sure that we can monitor the workplace in a way that we can really see that child labor is declining. So we hope this will work this time.
All right. You mentioned a little bit earlier on that you'll be exploring some of the root causes. What have you found? I guess it's a moving target that over time, circumstances, the world has changed and some of the root causes have changed. At the moment, what are the predominant causes for child labor that you're finding?
I lost you for a second because of the battery. Can you please quickly repeat the question?
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that what would you say are some of the predominant causes for child labor at this time?
Yes. Crisis in the world, the situation that I don't need to mention that are unfortunately creating a lot of limitation of multilateral system, that because we see the pandemic crisis, the different insecurity in the world, that's for sure very important now, but also the perseverance of informality, the inequalities that are in many countries, the low social protection that is granted to many workers, the education system that in many cases are not up to as what they should be, and that they do not create a future for children. So in many cases it's a lack of decent work opportunity for the adult that is creating child labor. So we are looking at this holistically, and but we also don't have to forget the children that are working now.
All right, it looks like we've lost Francesco Davido, who's the Chief Technical Advisor at International Labour Office, but I think we pretty much got on top of some of the issues that will be discussed at this conference starting tomorrow, and will be addressed by the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. Very important issues, and we'll be tracking that one for you as well. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more for you right here on the program, including Africa designing a digital platform to help countries find goods where they're getting that they used to be getting from Ukraine and Russia.